Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to the Eerie Late Night.
Welcome, everybody. It's another Saturday night, and here we are, Eerie Late Night. Welcome you to the Eerie Late Night Radio Show, and it's going to be a very, very special show. And I'm one of your hosts, Handsome Halloween Jack of the Haunted Theater.
And I'm yet another one of your hosts, Mr. Maniacal of the Insanity Show.
And I am the Bone Zinger. That's right. Happy, super sexy, scary Saturday, monster kids. Tonight is going to be a great, great show.
Yeah, and it's going to fly right by, so let's not waste any time and get right to it.
All stations, clear the air lanes, clear all air lanes for the big broadcast.
All right. Thank you so very much. Of course, tonight our guest is the one and only Svengoolie, and I just want to thank you for being on tonight, Sven.
Well, listen, I couldn't pass up being among such distinguished company here.
Wow.
How about that? Hey, so you were involved in the whole Svengoolie franchise from the get-go, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you started out as a fan, and then, of course, you started writing in those letters, sending in jokes and sketch ideas to Jerry G. What I was always wondering, because we're going to move on, of course, to your career specifically, but what I always wondered was when Kaiser Broadcasting came in and purchased WFLD, and they unceremoniously, seemingly, replaced Jerry G with Ron Sweet the Ghoul. I know it didn't sit well with me, and I would later become, I would get to meet and know Ron Sweet quite well. But at the time, I know that everyone was like me and was like, what is going on here? What was Jerry G's reaction to that, and what was your reaction to that at the time?
Well, very honestly, right before that transition happened, they had a big meeting where they were brought in advertisers and they were showing like one of those sizzle tapes about the upcoming season and talking about everything that was going to be going on all the Kaiser stations. And in it says something, up came the part of, and of course, people will be enjoying the wacky escapades of the Ghoul. And the big boss at WFLD at the time leaned over to Jerry and said, not here, he won't, which was an out-and-out lie. And a few weeks later, Jerry called me and he said, I don't know how to break this to you, but they're canceling Svengoolie. And at the time, he was feeling that maybe he would take it someplace else. And that did not happen. But, at the time, I was kind of like stunned by it because, the show was doing so well and was so popular. It seemed like, why would they do this? And, as you guys know, the Ghoul did not last long in Chicago. And, he probably shouldn't have, in his early show here, started calling Jerry a no-talent guy.
Yeah, that didn't help. That didn't help at all, and no, he didn't last long. And Jerry G was, the Svengoolie thing was like kind of a Beatlemania here in Chicagoland. But of course, you guys went on to do other things and work together, like on WMAQ radio and whatnot. And in '79, you came out with the Son of Svengoolie concept, and I believe Mr. Maniacal has a question about that.
Yeah, I was curious. Let's go back in the time machine, if we will. So here you're coming up to do the pilot for the Son of Svengoolie. I want to talk about the look. Was the look like Jerry G's Svengoolie, or and how did that? idea get passed on, and how did we create the Svengoolie that we all know and love today?
Well, yeah, what happened was the actual genesis of the character started when, during the time that Jerry was not doing Svengoolie, somebody from one of the stations that he knew, one of the other stations in town, called him and said, would you consider just doing it like as a summer thing? And at the time, Jerry said that he didn't want to do the character again, and this is the honest truth, because he actually thought someday he might want to get into politics and didn't want, whoever was running against him to pull out a picture of him as Svengoolie and say, this is the man you're going to vote for? And he was the one that actually said to me, you know what, you could be like son of Svengoolie, and, you and I could work on just writing it and I'd produce it. And I was, like, well, that's cool. Yeah, I was very flattered that he felt I could do it. And we had a lot of false starts on it and never really got to do anything. And when Jerry ended up moving to San Diego, he asked me, what are you going to do? Because I was just freelancing at the time, and everybody I was working with was going out to L.A., which I was not prepared to do. And I said, well, maybe I'll try to pitch somebody here on like a local TV show or something. He said, I tell you what, if you want, you have my blessing, go ahead and try to do the Son of Svengoolie thing. And
awesome.
I did. I shopped it around, called one TV station, explained what I wanted to do. The program director laughed and hung up on me. Class guy. Yeah. And
wow.
When I went to FLD and I brought them the whole concept and pitched them on the whole thing, they said, well, that's great. Maybe we could just have a bake-off and have a lot of people audition and do whatever they want to do as a host. And I was like, well, I just brought you this whole thing there. And it was like, oh, yeah, but we want to make this like a bake-off. So they did. And in the end, there's a lot of other things that went into it, but I did end up getting the show. And when we were first recording, I looked exactly like Jerry's character, complete with the green wig and the striped pants, although my pants were not red, white, and blue like his. But I looked identical to him. And when they were looking at it, they were like, well, we're not sure if that's going to fly or not, especially the green hair. We don't know, And I said, okay, so I got a brown wig and changed the color scheme of the hair and the mustache and beard. And then they were like, well, this seems like way too like hippie-like, and, hippies are long done by then. Maybe we should try something else. So I said, okay, and went home, went through other old costume stuff I had. I already had a top hat. I had the black coat. And they were actually part of something when my friends and I had made an old silent movie takeoff. And I just put that stuff together, but then maintained the same face makeup and hair, and went in, and they were like, well, we don't know. And I said, okay, tell you what, this is it. I'm not going to do anything else different. I don't see any, you guys don't have any ideas, so this is what it's going to be. Take it or leave it. And that's what we went with.
Wow.
To say that's
great.
one piece of advice that I took from Jerry G's Svengoolie is him saying that he wore the beard and the dark glasses so this way he wouldn't embarrass his family. I always remember hearing that.
Well, he also
anyway.
said that the reason he wore the sunglasses was because back then we used cue cards. And he said that way you couldn't see his eyes traveling back and forth reading the cue cards.
Yes. Well, I'm going to have to get a little geeky here, and I have a family member. As a matter of fact, my sister, who's I'll call Halloween Janet, and her husband Alan, recently got Me TV, and they have become huge Svengoolie fans. I mean, and she was writing me about this and saying, I can't believe it, Halloween Jack and Svengoolie, and yeah, I've been a horror host for 18 years, and all of a sudden now it's Halloween Jack. Yes, they've become huge fans. So
that's
I
nice
just wanted
to hear.
To do a shout out,
and especially when they've got someone in their family. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Says a lot for me. No, okay. Anyway, my question is when along came Rupert Murdoch, boo, and he bought Metromedia, which owned WFLD Channel 32, and they created the Fox network, which I mean that just killed a lot of the local programming. So the show was canceled, but you kept busy doing a number of things over the years. Can you tell the listeners what you were up to during those years after the show was canceled?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I did some radio during that time, and also I was on. Well, I did stuff on WGN, the powerhouse station here out of Chicago at the time. Did talk radio there. I did commercials. I had worked on and off with Dick Orkin, who did the Chicken Man series and does a lot of great, funny commercials, and I'd been working with him, so I had kind of an in on that, and I did a lot of freelancing during that time. And freelancing is one of those feast or famine type things. There's sometimes when you have a lot of stuff going on, and other times when there's nothing going on. And so it took a while to get back. And the funny thing was that I ended up going back to Fox. And the reason was that a local columnist who did radio and TV columns wrote on the 10th anniversary, what would have been the 10th anniversary of me being son of Svengoolie, that, it's a shame this guy isn't on, because Fox ended up canceling him. And Fox, I guess, at the time thought, this is giving us bad publicity, so let's bring him back. And they said, we want you to come in, and here's what we want you to do. We want you to host movies, but we've got an idea. You'll be like the Fox Phantom, and you're like in the basement of the station, and you're running old movies and stuff. And I said, okay, that's great, except do you guys ever watch TV? At the time, there was like the Phantom of something on one of the country music stations. That was the exact thing. And I can't recall exactly what he was called. Maybe you guys.
The Phantom of the Opry.
There you go.
So
Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, I tell you what, let's do something different. I've got an idea. Just recently, there had been a guy who had broken onto the airwaves of a couple of the local Chicago stations wearing a Max Headroom mask. And this became a big thing, and they were trying to figure out who did it. And they've never really figured out who did. They said they thought it was an inside job or something. So I said, how about if I'm a former disgruntled employee who's breaking into the signal and to do a show? And they were like, well, okay. They're so decisive. And so that was what we did. This was the nighttime co-zone, as it was called, and we did commercials where it would start out as like a commercial for Phil Donahue, I think, that was running on there at the time. All of a sudden there'd be static, and you'd see me, working on something in the background, some equipment, and there was a sign that said 10:30 Friday, and then it would fade out and go back to the end of the actual promo that was running. So people were thinking, what is this? Some guy's breaking into the signal? And the funny thing was, somebody from the FCC actually called the station and said, you want us to send out a truck and check who's doing that? And they were not really amused when they found out that it was actually, just a fake thing.
Wow. Oh, God, that's awesome. That is awesome.
Yeah, you made reference to Sir Cecil Creep. I believe he was the Phantom of the Opry.
That's who the Phantom of the Opry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but yeah, you came back. You came back on what was it? Like New Year's Eve, '94. You came back.
Yeah, what happened was I had been fired again from Fox. What a surprise! After doing everything that they wanted and more. They needed a weekend weatherman, and they decided I should be that weatherman. And, I had a passing interest in weather, but I didn't know anything about it. But I became the weekend weatherman and, did everything they said and, had good ratings and everything else. But then they decided they were going to get rid of me again. And time was going on, and some friends of mine said, Neil Sabin, the guy who had been program director at Channel 50 here in town, is going to be changing Channel 26, which is the first UHF station in Chicago, into like an old-time independent-type station. You should talk to him. And I said, well, I don't know about that because I've heard that he doesn't really like me. And they said, really? We'll check on this. And they called Neil and talked to him. And it turned out that the story that he didn't like me came from the program director at Fox, who would tell me that so that I wouldn't try to go elsewhere.
Okay. Yeah.
And so
I was going to ask you if Neil Saban. I consider Neil Saban to kind of be a genius in bringing you back, and I was going to ask you if it was him in particular that went about getting you back on the airwaves as Sven.
Definitely so, because we met. We went over to CIU, which was then in the Board of Trade building in Chicago. Went out to lunch and immediately bonded on a lot of stuff. Both of us loved the Three Stooges, and both of us knew lots about old TV. And he said this is when it was CIU was going to be like the main sort of thing. And he said I was actually his first talent hire there. And he said, would you mind doing the Son of Svengoolie character again? And I said, well, in the time that I haven't been doing it, I've still been doing appearances and doing radio and things with it. And there are so many people that when they recognize me on the street, they say, when are you going to do Son of Svengoolie again? I love that show. I figured, if people really had that much affection for it, it would be worth doing. So I said, sure, I'll do it. And it was right before we were going to go on the air that Jerry G. Bishop happened to come into town. And I was talking to him, and I said, I'm doing this. And I said, I just, even towards the end of my original run, people were saying, you're Son of Svengoolie, but who's Svengoolie? Because some people did not, as the generations go by, did not know who he was. And he said, I tell you what, at this point you're all grown up, just be Svengoolie. So it was really, really very nice of him to kind of, give me the right to use that name. He was a very generous man and a very talented man. And, yeah, you're right. We went on the air with CIU, I think it was New Year's Eve of 1994. And we're on CIU, and then just about, I want to say about 5 or 6 years ago, they put me on the network on MeTV.
That's right.
Awesome. Yeah.
That brings us to Maniacal's question.
Yeah. So now you're on MeTV. You're national. I guess I'm kind of curious how that came about. How did you end up going from, CIU? And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but you're on MeTV, and now you're the national horror host star that we all envy and wish we could be. So how was that journey?
Well, I'd just been doing the show and been on CIU for quite a while, and Neil started up MeTV here locally first, but then, got everything together, and it's amazing how he did it. But he managed to pull it off and ended up creating the network. And he said, it's supposed to give you, a good feeling for the kind of TV that people grew up with and they like. And he said, one of the kind of things that people grew up with and like are horror hosts. And he said, I think you would fit in perfectly with this. He said, we want it to be family friendly. And he said, I don't think you'll have any problem with that. And I think that it'll do real well. And I was, very flattered that he decided to do it, and it has turned out real well. I'm very lucky.
Well, Neil Saban, I said it already, I'm going to say it again. I consider Neil Saban to be a genius because he recognizes the charm of the old-time local television and how heartwarming that is to everybody that experienced that.
Most definitely.
Well, I agree.
That's one thing I have to say, having worked for many different people in management, and most of the time that I was at FLD, management that couldn't care less about what I was doing. There was only one short-lived regime there in which the guys really liked the show and cared about it and tried to promote it, and that was actually during the time where we ended up on all the different field-owned stations at the time. And that lasted only about a year, and in some markets less than that, because they all felt the show was being forced on them. And it was done really in a very bad way, because instead of doing the same movie for every market, each one of the markets had different movies. So we had to customize opens and closes and so much extra work just to try to make it work, and doing it also for people, again, in management at the other stations who really didn't care. But to have, now working for somebody who does believe in what you do, who does care about what you do, and, wants to promote it, that you couldn't ask for anything better than that.
Thank God.
Wow. Well, and speaking of hard work, that brings me to my question, a two-part question here. When people excel in a certain field, or they're very good at what they do, whether it's a musician or an actor, they make this look really easy. And you absolutely excel at what you do, and you make this look easy too. But we know there's a lot of hard work that goes into creating this weekly program you do. So, what is a typical week for you? And is there someone that you consider to be very invaluable in the production of your show?
Oh, yeah. First of all, people think, oh, you're on the network and it's a big staff, and it really isn't. The people involved are myself, my director and the chief editor, Chris, my executive producer, Jim, and our audio guy, Chaz, and that's the main core of the show right there. That's it. And, we also, you got somebody to run teleprompter for when we need it, and, like a floor manager to just cue me because, I don't know when I'm on there. And a typical week, it's hard to say what a typical week is, but I'd say the way things work most of the time is I'm screening a movie, and when I screen it, I break it down into the segments. If there's stuff that I have to take out of it or I have to edit it for time, I do that at the same time, and I take notes on all that. And then, the next step then is to write it. But while we're doing that, I'm also doing the post-production on other shows that we've done, which includes, finding the clips that fit to the script and everything, the stuff that we have to drop in, and, doing whatever else I do around the station, including commercials and voiceovers and working on the social media stuff. And then usually it's one period during each month where we shoot, for 3 or 4 days. And that's when we will end up doing the shows and doing any updates we need for old shows, as well as shooting new shows. And sometimes we're doing as many as 3 or 4, and other times it's like, maybe only 2. But it's a constant. It's like there's no real rest time in it, and I think you guys probably know how that works. It's like you're finishing up one thing, but you're starting on another.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. It's just nonstop. I mean, I've got the 2 programs, and it's just, people are like, well, you need to take it easy. You got to, have some relaxation in there. Well, when is there time for that? I mean, this stuff doesn't make itself. You have to keep going. But, of all the movies that you've hosted throughout the years, which is your favorite, and what is the one movie that you haven't hosted that you would love to host, that hopefully we'll see you host one day?
Well, let's see. It's hard for me to say what my absolute favorites were as far as movies. There's so many good ones that I really enjoy, and I'm happy that we ran. I really like Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and all the main, Universal classics that we've been lucky enough to get, Bride of Frankenstein and Creature from the Black Lagoon. And I like different movies for different reasons, and I like different shows I've done for different reasons. So it's hard for me to just nail down one thing. But as far as movies I'd like to show, I would love to show the original King Kong. We've never been able to get back. We had Vincent Price's Dr. Phibes movies, and we can't get hold of them again now. I've always wanted to run Fiend Without a Face, and we've not been able to get right to that one. That one has been one that I always loved and would love to show.
Oh, man.
Well,
if I could also mention, if it's okay for me to mention, it's just these days, back when I was first doing the show, it was so much easier to get movies. There were places, all these different distributors that had big packages of films, and they were hounding you to take them and get them, and they'd make all sorts of deals. Now, the competition for content is really, really much stiffer, and it's harder to get things. A lot of movies are under contract to places exclusively. Other ones are just not available. They're not even put out in packages anymore. You can't get the broadcast rights to them. And so it's kind of a battle, and there are people who have said to me, "Oh, all you're showing is this Universal stuff over and over again." And it's like, well, first of all, a lot of that Universal stuff is really good, and showing
Yes.
Frankenstein once every year. If you want to object to that, go ahead, please. But we're working on getting some other stuff for next year, and we're trying to mix it up because I'd hate to lose the momentum that we have right now.
We're quickly running out of time here. So, Mr. Maniacal, you want to give him one more question real quick?
Well, yeah. Let me just ask. You've been doing this for a long time. You are Svengoolie. What is your personal favorite part of being Svengoolie? I mean, I know there's a lot of work involved in writing shows and stuff, but what's the part you enjoy the most?
I have to say it's a tie between, the reaction of people when they come and meet me, and the fact that what I'm doing really means something to them. And people come up to me invariably at appearances and say, "Thank you for still doing this." And I mean, that means a great deal to me. And the other part of it is, quite honestly, I mentioned the guys I worked with. We have a great time. It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of work, but we have a good time doing it. And again, it's like, you get paid for doing this. Boy, you couldn't have a better life. It's a lot of fun, and working with guys who are really good at what they do. That means the world to me as well.
Jim is awesome. I just want to get that in there. Jim is such a fantastic human being.
Yeah, Jim Roach, and he at one time was in charge of all the promos for MeTV. He was running the MeTV promotion department, and I'm really flattered because they gave him the option if he would like to continue that or if he wanted to work executive producing my show, and he jumped at working with me. And again, it's so much fun.
Well, real quick before we run out of time, let's talk about the time change. What precipitated the time change here?
Well, one of the things that we've had a problem with is in some of the markets, they run news at like 10 o'clock. And because of that, they would run a half-hour news show, and then to try to fill up the time to make things start on the hour, they'd run something like Get Smart or whatever. So we'd be starting an hour even later. In some places, we didn't start till 11 o'clock at night. And we got a lot of complaints about that. Also, we get complaints from people, and, we were talking about how we're all tired. People saying, it'd be nice if it was on a little earlier because that way I don't have to fight to stay awake while I'm watching the show, which to me is like, oh, you're so bored, I'm putting you to sleep, huh? Well, no, but and the management wanted to see it. They thought we'd have a good shot at doing well in the earlier time slots. So starting next Saturday, we're going to be on at 8 o'clock Eastern Pacific Time and 7 o'clock Central. And if you're confused about when we're on in your market, wherever you are, all you have to do is go to metv.com and you can check on what station you see us on, of course, and what the schedule is. We were going to have Wonder Woman still right before us and Batman on after us.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome. Yes,
that's great.
Excellent.
Wow. I mean,
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yeah, time has been flying. And, people have been asking questions in the chat room. We're sorry we couldn't get to them. Our questions came first. I'm sorry. One of the more interesting ones was someone wants to know if do you have to deal with people coming up to you on the street and throwing rubber chickens at you?
No, but sometimes at appearances, people get a little too anxious about doing that. And, I've got to say to them, please don't do that. I've suffered many rubber chicken injuries in my career.
Well, Sven, thank you so much. As usual, when we have a great guest, time just flies, and this was no exception. And thank you so much for being on here and answering our questions, and hopefully you'll return one day.
Sure, that'd be great. And thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it. And again, I want you guys, just keep doing what you're doing and helping to, continue with the whole horror host genre. It's great that you guys are doing this as well. And, we're all brothers in this, so I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you so
we
much.
Appreciate it. You've influenced quite a few of us, so Thank you for that. And everybody, we're going to still be on for 15 minutes, the three of us, in the after party. So thank you, everybody in the chat room, and thank you, everybody, for listening. See you next week. Okay, and we are now in the after party.
Well, I'm going to crack open the champagne.
Well, Sven, I mean, if you have to, we know, I think, we lost him. Well, there he goes.
Yeah.
And I should have told him to stick around if he wanted to, but we know he had to go. Again, thank you, everybody in the chat room. I mean, the chat room jammed-packed. I think we broke Blog Talk. Tons of people in there, and they were asking questions. We're sorry we couldn't get to it, but hopefully we'll have them on again. So, gentlemen, your impressions.
Maniacal.
Awesome. Pure awesomeness. No, all joking aside, I mean, very cool guy.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it was Jack, I think you said to him that, he serves as an inspiration. And let's face it, I mean, being national on MeTV, he's keeping the genre alive, and he's really, really cool about it. Really down to earth, and just awesomeness. I don't know what else to say. It's awesome.
Well, and that, and the fact is, let's face it, we've met people in his position before who aren't as awesome.
That is true. That is true.
And sometimes that's people feel they don't have a right to be, but he absolutely, I agree 100% with what you're saying.
Well, that's the whole thing here, and that's the difference. I just wanted to say that's the difference, because you have some people that have been around for a long time, and they have an attitude and a chip on their shoulder. And then you have another person, like in Sven, that busts his behind over the years to keep the show going and to keep it relevant. And you would think he would be able to justify that chip on his shoulder, but he doesn't have it, because he knows. He's cool. He's down to earth, and great guy. I'm glad he came on.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Bones, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You didn't cut me off. Okay. Sven and I have been friends, I mean, I felt like I was his friend before I ever even met the dude, watching him as son of Svengoolie, and I loved those old shows, and Jack and I, we have so many of those old shows, and just, you want to get the feel for local television and somebody that's knocking it out of the park every week. You just take a look at that old Son of Sven stuff, and you'll see exactly that. But Sven and I have been friends since the get-go of the Bone Jangler. And he has always been very candid with me, very honest with me, and supportive of me when, for example, when I was nominated for the Hall of Fame, the Horror Host Hall of Fame, which of course Sven is in, he and Elvira, actually, those were the first two people that I heard from congratulating me that are horror hosts. And those two could have saved some time and just, somebody had one of their handlers buy a card and they both signed it or something, because they both said the exact same thing. And which was, hey, congratulations on your nomination. It's well deserved. And I got to tell you, though, I'm kind of surprised, because I thought when I first read that, what? You mean he's not already in there? And Ben in particular was just very, very profuse about telling me, quite honestly, genuinely, because that's how he is, that's how he operates. You just saw it, you just heard it. He was very honest about, being happy for me and saying that he felt that I deserved it. And I'm telling you, too, and I know that you know this is true, but I'm just saying for the people that will listen in the archived edition, when he thanked us at the end of the show for keeping this genre alive, he was being quite sincere.
Oh,
Yeah,
I know. You can tell. You can tell he was. And you know what? There was a lot of myths going around that he had a problem with a lot of the, cable access hosts, and I never believed that. See, I never met him like you did, but I mean, I used to talk back and forth with him, even going back to when we first all started in this. And he was, I mean, you could tell he was a very genuine person even back then. But let me tell you something real quick, a story just to show you. Across the street from me was it still is, it's abandoned now, was the elementary school. The principal there, named Kim Halterman is her name, or Miss Halterman as we all call her. I actually went over to the school there to read stories of Halloween and everything, and we connected and started talking. Big Svengoolie fan, absolutely big Svengoolie fan. She was so thrilled, and when I told her, I've talked to him before, she was like, oh my gosh, So they closed the school down. She lost her job. She's still in the system, but I got in touch with Svengoolie, and I told him about this. And he sent her an autographed picture, and it wasn't just an autographed picture. He wrote this wonderful message to her on this picture about how she has, inspired her children and all the children that, that in the school. And, I mean, how many people go out of their way to do something? I mean, an autographed picture is fantastic, but, I mean, he took the time to write this super message on there, and she was so happy. I mean, it brought her, she was just, like, really happy with it. And that says a lot to me about him, his character and everything.
Well, it's those little actions that prove that.
Friend. I'm honored to be his friend. And again, when he said that we're all brothers in this, he meant exactly what he said. And everyone that's a huge fan of him, they have every reason to be, more so than they realize, because they're focused on just, it's a very insular thing. It's Sven time. Here it comes. Here we go. Here comes the jokes. Here comes the puns. Here comes the song parodies. Here comes the rubber chickens and Enchantress Nocturna's chicken shield that he uses. But it's not just that. I mean, he is such he's a good man. He's a good man. And I've been with him several times. I've even worked with him at a wrestling show, which is all a total lark. It just happened. But I am so thrilled and pleased tonight with him being on the show. I'm just so happy that he does.
Well, one thing that impresses me with him too is, he's been through a lot. I mean, and he's done this for a long time. Look at you were talking about his roots with the original Sven, Jerry G, and he's been through a lot of ups and downs to get where he is. And I can say this without any hesitation that of all the horror hosts I know, him getting that national syndication, being syndicated nationally, he deserves it. He really does. And I feel there's other hosts that deserve it too. And I'm just not, but he really did. Out of everybody that we know, as far as horror hosting goes, I think I'm really happy that he got that deal. And he's doing a lot with it, and he's doing a lot for us, for this genre too. I mean, let's face that.
He does, and I hope that him being on tonight, this is what I meant to say, and I got lost in just all my heartwarming excitement about the thing, is when he said that he was our brothers, and he thanked us, I hope that the fans of his that will listen to the archive edition will take that to heart and listen to what he said, because you can love Svengoolie all day long, and there's not a single reason not to, especially when you know him, like I do. But there's others of us out here, and if you appreciate this genre, you really owe it to yourself to check some of us out. And I think you'll love what you see. It's like ice cream or cake. There's more than one flavor out there. And you really need to check it out. And, you know, it's not like the old days like, well, yeah, but I don't live in Boston or I don't live in New Orleans. No, it doesn't matter. There's this little, I'm going to clue you in on a little secret. Walter Mondale, or who was it? I don't know, Bill Clinton's vice president, whoever that guy was. He invented this thing called the Internet. And you can watch other horror posts all the time. You can do it, and you should do it, and you'll love it. You'll love it, and you'll still love Sven more than anything else. But, you know, it's like this. I love the $100 bill, but, you know, I love the $50 bill, the $20 bill, the $1 trillion bill. I love all of it. And you really owe it to yourselves to check it out and listen to Sven and check it out. And you're going to love the heck out of it. In fact, you ought to check out the Monster Channel sometime. And that's at EerieLateNight.com. I think you'll be very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, because it's that old-time, what we have set up is just like that old-time television that he's talking about, that he said was sorely missed. Well, we have that. You know, we have, you know, we're not like the atypical retro channel. Most of them are good, don't get me wrong, especially MeTV, because they have Sven and all those retro shows, but we're doing the same thing, and we have a lot of horror hosts too. But to your point, it wasn't only what he said at the end that I felt, I had that warm, fuzzy feeling come over me when he said that, but it's what he said when he first came on. Do you remember?
At the very beginning?
Said, yes. He was happy to be in such esteemed company.
Ah, yes. Almost forgot about that.
Go back
one.
and listen. Everybody, go back and listen in the archive. In the beginning, I have to say that choked me up in the beginning. And like Bones said, you can tell when somebody's BSing and when somebody's sincere. And you know, he kind of laughed when he said esteemed company, but you know, we all laughed. But that was nice. I know he meant that, and I appreciate that.
You know how when you hear your voice on the phone or you hear it recorded for like the first time and you think, that doesn't sound like me at all. What's that? When Sven called in tonight before the show, I was like, wow, he doesn't sound like himself. What's this all about? And then after he started speaking and saying the things that he always has every time I've ever dealt with him, immediately that was gone. He sounds exactly like Sven. He sounded exactly like the guy that I know because of what we're talking about, because of the things that he said. I mean, I can't impress upon you people enough. If you ever get a chance to meet your TV hero, and he is a hero, if you ever get a chance to meet Svengoolie, by all means, don't be nervous about it. Or don't think, well, you know, we can't go this time. We'll catch him again. He does a lot of stuff. We'll catch him again. No. Go out and see him and meet him, and you're going to remember it for the rest of your life. You think you're a fan now? Wait till you get to meet him. You're going to love it.
We're getting down to about a minute left. Real quick, I want to ask you, the way when you said that at first it didn't sound like him, and you started throwing the questions out, were you testing him to see if it was him? Because that crossed my mind for a minute. Like, okay, was this him? I mean, it really did. I thought, you know, sometimes the numbers come up differently on here, and the numbers came up as all ones, and I thought to myself, well, geez, could this be somebody else besides him? You know, and I kind of got the impression when you started asking questions in the beginning, I'm like, is he testing him to see if it's really him? Or
No, I knew it was him, but it was just sort of like, wow, I knew he got up early today. I thought, wow, he must have gotten up at like 1 in the morning. I mean, like, what's going on here? But then as he continued to speak, then it like he does, and saying the things that he says, right away I knew it was him. Now, I wasn't testing him, but yes, that is something that the Bone Jangler would do. If I suspected there was some sort of treachery, you bet you bet your hind end that I would be like, oh yeah, okay. So what did we say?
Yeah. We get a lot of treachery. Yeah, we probably have about 15 seconds. 15 seconds. I don't know how we're going to top this next week, but we're going to try. So thank you everybody for listening, and have a good rest of the weekend.